Well, hello again. It's Gerald and Scott with Lab Talks. So, Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I almost said good morning. I don't know why. It's just a normal thing. It's like you just get in there and you go, okay, good morning. It's like, no, wait. It's not morning. But anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what. We film these in the evening, so we work a full day. We go home, and then I start getting like I'm ready for a nap, you know. And then I'm like, I can't go to sleep because we still got to come back. And but here we are. We're here for you, and we're talking about the cost of 2020 vision. And last time we got together, we talked about navigating the fog of the entrepreneurial journey. And really what we were talking about is planning and preparation, and this is like the lack of it is the #1 dream killer.
Absolutely.
And so all the problems in business failure really come because that didn't get done. And so we talked about, you know, that when you start each phase of planning, you go into this fog where you get very confused, and it's normal. And so we encourage people to push through. Okay, so that's what we did last week. Today we're going to talk about 2020 vision and the clarity that comes on the other side of the fog.
Okay.
And so one of the interesting things, I want to define it. I have it written down here. Now this is not my definition. I got this from somebody, and I had the book today, and Stephen Scott. That's who I got it from. His name is Stephen Scott. And I loved it. I read it years ago, and I've used it ever since. And he talks about, this is his definition for vision. Vision is a precise, clearly defined goal with a detailed plan and a timetable for achieving that goal. So I wanted to contrast the difference between, hey, I've got an idea and I have a vision. Totally two separate things. And I think that a lot of people, I mean, you know, he took that word vision and then he filled it up with something. And he gave his definition to it. But you can't, if you just have an idea, but you have no idea how you're going to carry it out, you don't have vision.
Okay, so I got to tell you the story. So I got useless stories.
This is good.
Okay,
this is the time for them.
Oh, okay.
Since our families won't listen.
No, they've heard this one before. It was when we lived in this neighborhood. We lived at the end of this cul-de-sac, and there was a little kid. He was probably first grade. No, he was younger than that because he was still riding a tricycle, so he was probably kindergarten or less. And so he's riding his tricycle one day, and he rides over, and I mean, he's enthusiastic about life. Whatever he does, he's enthusiastic. And he comes riding over. He goes, you know, I got this really great idea, but it probably won't work. and I look at it as like, you know, that's the problem with so many entrepreneurs. Like, I got this really great idea, and they barrel forward. But like we were talking about, if there's not preparation, if you haven't done the preparation, you're going to fail.
You're going to fail.
That's really what he did. It's like he was going to fail. But it did sound good.
At least he knew. At least he knew.
It won't work.
At least but I think with a lot of people is, and you've had this happen, people come to you and they go, let me, you know, especially like on opening day of Accelerator, or, you know, when we have some kind of event and somebody comes in, they're so excited about this dream that's bursting inside of them. Especially if it's God-planted. I mean, if it's a God-planted dream, they're like, oh, God put this in my heart, and I'm going to go do this. And one of the first questions I ask them, you know, when they start telling me that, and I almost don't want to tell them, Scott, because they're so excited.
Right.
I don't want to rain on their parade. But I'm like, that's not a vision. You have an idea, AKA fantasy. And unless you really go through the work of a detailed plan, a timeline, and goals, you don't have a vision.
So you could really feel like it's inspired, and it could be inspired, but until you start doing the work and the diligence of writing it down, and then, of course, the plan that goes with it, it's useless. It really is useless.
And, you know, it's, I think, Christians, and I think kingdom entrepreneurs, somebody that's really out to change the world. I mean, they have everything right inside in their heart. Okay. What they get wrong is they think, you know what, God's going to make everything happen for me. And we know it doesn't, it rarely, I mean, if it does work like that, fantastic.
But it is so rare.
It is rare.
And it really is a disservice to the person, because like if they do that, let's just say it works out and they get something to kind of work out. They're still doomed to fail, because now they're going to think this is the only way I need to do it.
Right.
And I mean, we've been Christians for a long time. It's like, and I'm all for inspiration. I'm all for being led by God and believing, God's really in this. But at the same time, I have got to do all my preparation, the diligence to go with it. Otherwise, it's useless. It's going to fail. And I think that's biblical.
It is. I found this scripture this morning, and I thought, boy, this is perfect to today. It's Proverbs 21:5, and it says, "The plans of the diligent," and that word's important because we're going to talk about diligence, lead surely to abundance and advantage, but everyone who acts in haste comes surely to poverty. So I would tell you that during the week, every week, throughout the month, I talk to people. A lot of times it's the first conversation that we're having, and they're so excited. And this is from God, and they're going to carry it out. And I says, do you have a plan? And they say, yes, I just told you what it is. And Scott, they actually, people get,
and they believe it.
And they get mad when you kind of like rain on their parade, and you go, that's not a plan. Or sometimes they go, let me show you my business model, and they really didn't answer any of the questions that we have to answer when we struggle through that. So why do you think, we talked about the fog last time, okay?
Right.
But why do you think people don't do the work? And we have two kinds of people too. We have the people that are in full-time jobs, so they have the that kind of schedule. They probably have families, and then so to do all this planning and preparation, it's going to have to happen on the weekends, or maybe an hour a night or something like that. And then we have the people that they're not in a full-time job, and this is their full-time job, getting ready to launch or accelerate their company. And usually if they're here and they have a company, it's because something bad has happened.
Right.
It's not working out. That's usually, when they come here. Why do you think they're not doing it?
Okay, so one of the words that comes to me right away is comfort.
That's good. Explain that.
All right, so comfort is like, I've got an idea, and I may even start to work on it. I may have a couple of sheets here, and I'm working on it a little bit. But you know what? If life is still comfortable, even if I don't like it, even if I don't like where I am, it's like I know I've got this vision inside of me. I know I got this great thing that I'm going to do. But the problem is that if I'm comfortable, I don't have the drive to be able to pursue it. I'm not willing to sacrifice. I mean, that really is what it comes down to. I'm not willing to sacrifice. If I'm getting paid enough, maybe I'm not rich, but I'm getting paid enough, and maybe even I'm not getting paid enough. I'm barely making it. I got zero money in the bank, but there's still something about that comfort. It's like there's a fear of breaking out of that comfort zone. Yeah,
because even the person in poverty gets comfortable. They're comfortable being uncomfortable. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually
Does that make
true.
sense?
Yeah, because it's the frog in the kettle. It's like, the heat slowly gets turned up, but it's the heat slowly gets turned up, and you don't recognize that what's going on is like you're cooking. But in this sense, you don't recognize that you're slowly. I mean, it's going to sound harsh, but it's like you're slowly dying.
Yeah.
And not just physically, you're slowly dying. The inside, that drive or that fire, that thing that you have that you really want to do, it is slowly dying the more you sit in that comfort.
How do you break it to somebody? How do you do it when they have all these ideas? And a lot of times it's not just one idea, they have a bunch of ideas. And Scott, I've got all these ideas that God's put in my heart. But they haven't done any of the work. They haven't done any of the planning. They haven't. What do you do? Like, how do you tell them? Because you're nicer than I am. You are nicer than I am.
It depends on the person.
Okay.
And I think that most of the time I've got it right, but there's occasionally I've got it wrong when I thought, I need to be. Some people I think you got to be really blunt with.
Okay.
And I think they're strong enough to take it. And then there's other ones like you kind of have to beat around the bush, and you do it by you just keep asking questions until they finally realize
I don't have a plan.
I don't have a plan. And if you ask a bunch of questions and they still can't get it, you're finally going to have to say, you ain't got a plan.
You ain't got a plan.
So I don't know. It really kind of depends on the person. And like I say, sometimes I really hit it. Sometimes it's like, yeah, this person, I really got to shoot straight with them. It's kind of like a coach. When I used to love coaching, and it's like as a coach, you kind of have to check. You know your players, and you know which players you can say you're slacking off, and you can, and which players you have to say, come on, I know you can do better, and you have to recognize each one of those people. Again, sometimes I'm good, and sometimes I'm not so good. But.
Okay, so earlier this week we were whiteboarding and brainstorming about this, and so we were talking about, okay, there's been times in both of our lives where we've had ideas or initiatives, and we didn't do the planning. Mm-hmm. And maybe we just didn't even see it at the time, but like we didn't know we were supposed to. But in the times in your life when you haven't done the work, you have an idea, you have a direction, but you haven't done the work, what's the reason why you haven't done it?
I could get really nice, but I could say some of it's just lazy.
Yeah.
It's just lazy. It's like, you know what? And not that I'm a lazy person, because I don't know that I am, but it's like just lazy. It's like, okay, I can do this. I can figure this out. And sometimes it's for me, I think it's just this enthusiasm. Oh, I can do it. I can do it. And they realize, wow, I tell my kids every now and then, it's like, wow, that didn't turn out like I planned.
Because in the beginning, you're just full of enthusiasm.
Yeah, but the plan's up here. The problem is the plan's up here, and unless I've got it written down, and unless people around me understand what the plan is and what the vision is, they don't know what's in my head.
Right.
I mean, you and I have both said that.
Yeah.
We both said that. Well, you don't know what's in my head. It's like,
well, and here's the thing that's happened with us. When I don't have something in writing or in a presentation or something, I'll explain so let's be transparent here. I many times have explained something to you, right? In my head,
we've both done that.
Yeah, in my head, I've told you everything. And then
I go, I made sense in my head. I don't know how come you didn't get it. Yeah.
I thought we were one.
Yeah.
And so then, like the week later, you're like, I don't remember you telling me that, and I'm, what's in my head?
But that's what's so important about a written plan, and to write the plan and
make it plain.
And make it plain. And I think some of the things that we're going through right now, and just because we're switching some things, and it's like you write it, and then you write it, and then you write it, and each time you write it and then talk about it.
It gets clearer.
There's something powerful about words that are spoken, and of course the Bible's real clear on that. It's like the power of our words, and it's not just the power of our words because of what we say. It's the power of our words with the more I communicate what the vision is. Not just writing it down, but then just speaking it. As I speak it, I hear it. The person next to me hears it, or three or four, and they begin to interact. And I go, okay. Each time I do that, I'm honing in. I'm focusing better. I'm okay. I didn't make that clear. Here's what it is that I need to do. And it's all very powerful, and that's all part of the whole process when we're talking about in here. This preparation and diligence. You've got to be able to do that.
Now, you were very honest and transparent when you said, well, when I asked you, in the past, when you haven't planned, how come? And you said, well, I'm just lazy, in that instance, right?
Yeah.
But that's because we've already talked about it, so you've got nowhere to go with it. We're transparent. But when people when you're counseling somebody else, mm-hmm. that's usually not what they admit to. No. What are some of the things that you hear when they haven't done the work?
Oh, you hear all kinds of excuses.
The excuses, I'm busy. And
the dog ate my homework. It translates into, once you become an adult, into more sophisticated excuses, but there's still excuses nonetheless. And the thing that when people begin to use the excuses, like, all right, you got the same 24 hours as everybody else. It's like, and tell me, and here's one of the things that I tell people a lot, is like, for every excuse that you have, every experience, and not to say that some people don't have some really big excuses and really big things that they've got to overcome, but for every excuse or trial or whatever it is that you want to say, every roadblock that you have, and you say, I can't make it, there's somebody there that has had the same things that you have and has been able to overcome.
Right.
So if they can do it, you can do it.
Right.
And that's what I try to encourage people is like, look, if they did it, it doesn't mean you can't do it. You absolutely can do it.
And I think sometimes we just have to admit,
that's powerful,
that
isn't it?
It is. Just, okay, this is possible. Because one of the things I ask people is I say, look, if I were to pay you $100,000 to do your plan, but the plan had to do X amount of revenue in the plan and had to show X amount of profitability.
And it had to be done by Sunday.
Everybody would do it.
Yeah.
And no one would have a problem with it. But I think there's a procrastination. There's, I really do think, Scott, sometimes with Christians, they think because it's a God idea, if it's that he's going to do everything. And so I was thinking today about like biblical characters where, God gave them an assignment. And so one of the ones, like I've heard people talk about Nehemiah for leadership. A lot of people do leadership studies around leadership. Yeah. And now first, if you don't take the time to write something down and work through the plan, you can't even be a good leader because you can't lead. You don't even know where you're going. You're just winging it. And if you're winging it, so will everybody else. But you think about Nehemiah saw like an entrepreneur. I'm not saying he was an entrepreneur because I don't know, but I don't know his background.
We're teaching entrepreneurship, so
everybody's an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur.
We'll make a case for it.
And so he saw a problem. Right? And that's what most of us, when we're in the marketplace, we see a problem and then we want to go solve it. So the problem was the wall around Jerusalem. I'm going to get you're going to have to help me. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of how many years. I may be wrong on this. I want to say it was a century.
Yeah, it had been a while.
80 years or something like that the wall had been broken down. So that all these people had grown up with, this is just the way it is, the wall is broken down.
So think about it. If you're in a house next to the wall that's broken down, you love the idea that you could just kind of hop over the broken down wall and get to the other side. You don't have to walk. I mean, what I'm saying is people probably found comfort in just, this is the way it is. It's always been.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when there's a problem, not everybody's that concerned. So think about this. When he saw the problem.
See that? Okay, there's the comfort thing that you come up with.
Yeah.
You become comfortable with that. And even though you don't like it, it becomes comfortable and it becomes a part of your life, right?
Right.
It's a part of who you are. It's a part of the life. It's like, wow, this is just what we do. We always have to step over this when we get in the house or whatever. And you get comfortable and used to it. So now when somebody moves it, instead of you celebrating it, what do? What'd they move that for? Even though it makes your life better. Does it make sense?
Am I having a deja vu, or did we preach this together?
Did we?
I think we did. I think so. Some of these things are I think we did preach this some time back.
If we didn't, we should have, and it was really good.
It was really good. It was really good. So Nehemiah saw a problem.
Right.
He went to God. Now, God could have just snapped his fingers and the wall goes up. But he didn't. And I just don't think he's never done that in my life.
No.
And when I'm thinking through all these different stories in the Bible of different people that saw problems and were out to solve it, what did Nehemiah have to do? He had to come up with the plan. He didn't have any of the resources to do this, right? And he had to get out of his comfort level because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the first person that he went to see was the king. Did he go to the king first?
So his brother came and told him what was going on, and then he went to the king, and then he already had, and here's the interesting thing, so he fasted and prayed, so he did have a clear plan.
Oh.
He had a clear plan. So when the king came and he said, what's wrong? This is nothing but sadness of heart. The Bible says that Nehemiah gave a quick prayer, and so he does give the quick prayer, and so then we want to talk about the miracles, like, so then he suddenly had the plan. It's like, no. I think he'd already been fasting and praying for it, so it's like,
That's important.
He had the plan. So when the king says, what is it, what's going on? He explained the problem, and then the king says, well, what do you need? And he just laid out a plan. He said, here's what I'm going to need. This is who I'm going to have to contact. And so you look at that. it doesn't say it specifically, but you can read from the text and recognize that Nehemiah had a clear plan. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. I know when it's going to be there. And then the king even said, how long are you going to be gone? And he was able to say, this is how long I'm going to be gone.
So you don't think he just went to the king unprepared and said, you know what? I got some
No
really...
way.
What would happen back then
way.
if you wasted the king's time?
Well, we wouldn't be reading about Nehemiah.
So,
Off with his head.
and what was his job? He was the
cupbearer,
which is he checks the food.
Yeah.
So
he checks the yeah. So he would check the food. He would check the wine. So you know he was in the inner circle. He was as trusted.
Check the wine,
person.
huh?
Yeah, you were.
That's
you
a
like
pretty.
that job?
You get it.
Sign me up,
You
baby,
get it.
sign me
You
up.
get to test the food. That sounds good.
Yeah.
You got to have a little wine. That sounds good. But if it's poisoned, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So okay, this is really important because what you said with the fasting, because Jesus, before he started his ministry, or at the beginning of it, fasted, right? Mm-hmm. Fasted for 40 days. And when I was putting together, working through our plans for next year, and all through really the last 60 days, we meet a couple times a week, and you've seen me go from great confusion in this, in the fog, all this kind of stuff. And even though I would prefer not to fast sometimes, I needed clarity. I needed 2020 vision for 2020.
So Gerald, it's a diligence though. That's like you were willing to. It's like whatever it takes.
Whatever.
Yeah, and and by your own admittance, fasting is not high on the list of things that you want to do.
Not.
But it is. It's so powerful. It's like that we brought this up, and this is one of the things that I've noticed is like the pain becomes so great. And so you're looking at it, the pain of being where I am is so great. I will do whatever I need to do in order to get me to the next level or to the next position that I want to be in.
Right.
And the problem with people is that so many people start and they'll begin their whole process of, okay, I'm going to write the vision, and they do. They write down there. They may even have some plans, and they may have some fairly extensive plans. But in the process of the fairly extensive plans, then the pain begins to subside. And so as the pain subsides, then how hard they work and how diligent they work subsides. And then pretty soon they slip back into this comfort zone.
Right.
And then the stuff goes back on the shelf. The power of pain and the importance of pain is this. It's to always remember this. It's like, remember the pain that you're in to push you to the point. Because you even said something like 90% of people make the decision or make the move forward out of pain, not because they want to
Only 10% of humans are motivated by rewards.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
And God promises rewards.
Right. So the 90% of us that are really moved by pain, what you've got to do is you've got to hang on to that and remember the pain that you're in to push you forward into where you're going. And because the pain eventually will subside.
Right.
But you've got to keep the pain in front of you in the sense of remembering, I don't want to be there, because you will go back to that, because we know that there's ebb and flow in life all the time. So it's like the pain, you hit the bottom, the pain's there, and you go, okay, I'm making a change, and then the pain begins to get better, and then you slow down. It's like you're going to be, what do you always say? It's like you're either coming out of a crisis.
Oh yeah, you're either in a crisis, coming out of a crisis, or everything's going great and you're heading right forward.
See, and so there's an ebb and flow.
There's
always
seasons.
in life. There's seasons in life, and so you've got to hang on to that pain in order to press yourself into the preparation and then the diligence to push through to get where you need to be, which is the 2020 vision that we're talking about.
I have from the same source, Stephen Scott, I have his definition of diligence, which we've used. I've used it for years, and a lot of the coding camps that I built around the country, I use it for myself. We use it here at Cana. And here's the definition. Diligence is a learnable skill. Okay, so you can learn it. Just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can't do it. That combines, the first thing is creative persistence. So let's define that for a second. Why do you need creative? I mean, persistence is you just keep moving forward. Why do you need to be creative about it? Why do you think?
Creative persistence.
Yeah, it's.
Tell me this. I don't know. It's like, tell me what you.
Okay,
I
so
got
here's
some
what's
ideas.
in my head is so sometimes.
'Cause I don't know what's in your head.
Sometimes you hit. Why not? I reviewed this all day in my head.
Oh, okay. Okay. So anyway,
creative persistence is you hit a problem.
Yeah.
And you really have to be very creative to get around it. And so one of the things that we always talk about is sometimes in your lack, there's something right in front of you that you wouldn't.
That's right.
That if God had answered the prayers the way you've been praying, which is, if you're an entrepreneur, it's probably, oh, Lord, send money or whatever, you wouldn't see the thing that's going to set you apart, that's going to be a game changer for your business, full of innovation. So one thing about creative persistence is you're being very creative. And who are you going to? If you want to be creative, there's one person that you should go to. You should go to the creator. Because one of the things that we do with God is we're co-creators with him. We partner with him and we're co-creators. He creates the wheat, we create the cake, right? He creates the trees, we create the chair. So we're co-creator. He could just snap his finger, and way back in the biblical days we have jets and all this stuff, but no, it's man that has to come up with these ideas, but he knows everything.
Okay, so now we need to call this. We went to a conference and I heard this sentence, but now it needs to be ours because we've said it often enough, right?
Right.
But what we heard was because we don't have, we can.
Right. That's good.
Because we don't have. And so, and people forget that. It's like, well, I just don't have it. It's like, wait a minute. Out of what you don't have can come, you're talking about creativity, can come that innovation. The innovation comes not when you have plenty. The innovation comes when you really have lack.
Right.
And you've got to look for that something extra. And that's part of what persistence is all about. Persistence is powerful, and you need to have it.
And the word says we need it.
Yeah.
When the word says you're going to have to be patience, you're going to have patience and perseverance. You don't need patience and perseverance unless you're going to Disneyland. You have to wait in a 3-hour line, or there's going to be some trouble. That's right. You don't need patience and perseverance if there's 2 people deep at Jack in the Box and you're ordering your burger. You don't need patience and persistence. Now it says.
No, I've been there before when they go, oh, I don't know what I want. It's like, so then I lose my patience.
Then you lose your patience.
Let me just order for you.
Yeah. Oh, the person in front.
Oh, yeah. They're just like, look, I'll just order for you.
You know what our role is? If we go to the drive-in and you better know, like if we're going to McDonald's. Okay, McDonald's hasn't changed their menu that much. If you're with me and you get to the drive-in and now we have to sit and go, and this is usually my wife, Leslie, and she's looking at the menu like it's the first time. Thank God for In-N-Out. I think they have 3 things on the menu, right?
Yeah,
and they make it really easy. Okay, we digress. So creative persistence, a smart working effort rightly planned. So it has to be smart working, it has to be rightly planned, and then it says, and rightly performed, which is executed in a timely, efficient, and effective manner to attain a result that's pure and of the highest quality of excellence. Now, when we use words, we fill it up with definition. And this guy, this is a very, very successful business person that's written a lot of books. I see him on a lot of forwards of other books. So, this is a good guy. And we have to have diligence. And the Bible talks about it all throughout. And so if you look at Nehemiah all the way through that. I mean, it wasn't like, I don't know what the time frame was when he first saw the problem and when the wall was built, but I know this, when they were building the walls, they had their swords and their shields with them because they were under attack. And if you're a kingdom entrepreneur and you're climbing this mountain, the enemy's going to attack. And so this is where you have to persevere. Yep. You have to prepare. Our friend Benson told me a couple of weeks ago, he says, listen, the battlefield is not where you go to prepare. The battlefield is where you go to fight and win. Mm-hmm. And so I know that preparation always should be pre-launch. Or if you have a business and you're planning some new thing that you're doing, that's what we do with preparation. I think the human nature is, well, we have an idea, let's just go with the flow. We have all kinds of clever things that we could say, and then if bad stuff happens, and we'll adapt. But we've really been reckless if we do that. If you're taking a flight, and I know the pilots have like a checklist mm-hmm. that they go through when they're preparing for a flight. If they don't go through their checklist and just like, hey, you know, I've done 1,000 flights, yeah, everything looks fine, let's just see what happens, I'm sure they could get fired. I mean, they're carrying a bunch of lives and people in that mm-hmm. thing. So this diligence in the preparation is just huge. And we wouldn't hammer on this so much if this came naturally, but it doesn't.
It doesn't come natural, not at all.
And even from people that are like corporate executives mm-hmm. in leadership roles that go to launch companies, and they think that all of that experience is just going to carry over. It doesn't. This week, I'm trying to think of how many people I met that presented their business plans to me, and there wasn't one that was right. So it's just.
No, explain that. When you say
so
it wasn't right,
so what they've done is when in the business
you're looking for
in phase 2, or like the second stage of what we're doing when they're coming up with business model. We're going through something called Lean Business Canvas, which mm-hmm, you know about, mm-hmm. and there's 9 questions that we're trying to answer. We go 5 whys deep. So every time we come up with an answer, we say why. Mm-hmm. We have an exercise where they have to do a bunch of research on this problem, mm-hmm. and there's 5 questions that they're answering. Okay, what's the problem? How is it epidemic or widespread? How do we, what happened? How did we get here? What's the solution? And what's my role in that solution? And so they're doing all this research. We're saying you have to find 20, whatever's in your gut, whatever your assumptions are, you have to find proof from magazines, from articles, from reputable sources that this is indeed a problem.
And they didn't do.
And then from that, so I'm just talking through the process. And then from there, after they come up with all this, then they have to create what we call a brand positioning article, where they write their own article. And when they do that, and it's something that's really going to help shape their brand. And so it's a lot of work. We've done a bunch of these ourselves, and they're hard.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of rewrites. The first time you put the content down, I think that's the hardest. And then somebody comes after and goes, okay, do this, do that, and we've gone through Lean Business Canvas with Cana and things that we're going to do, and it's just really, really hard work. So what happens, Scott?
Yeah. So when you say this wrong, what is it that you were looking for?
There's 4 big components that I look for out of the 9 questions.
Okay.
Very specific. What is the problem mm-hmm. for their future buyer? Mm-hmm. Okay. If it's not a problem that buyer wants to spend money to solve, even though, it's kind of like you could say, well, I want to solve, the homeless problem. Well, unless the homeless people want to do something themselves to solve it, you're not going to be able to. Yeah. Okay. So what's the problem? Mm-hmm. What's the solution? Mm-hmm. Okay, so being very specific about that. And then, who are the segments? Who are the exact people that are going to spend the money?
Well, I want to reach everybody.
Yeah. And then, how are you going to reach them? So, mm-hmm. That's segments, mm-hmm. and then that's channels. And what we want to see is, how do you make money? How does this thing work? You're going to charge how much for what? And so, usually what happens is, in general, they're talking about this big problem out there, but they haven't proved that they've built a model. They've confused it having to come up with a model that makes money with just seeing a problem in general. And so really what it is, Scott, is they haven't been diligent.
That's the word that keeps coming to me.
Yeah,
Like as you're describing this, it really comes down to it. It really is. It's a lot of work to be. It's
a lot of work,
but it's powerful because out of that, you've mentioned that before. It's like it seeps out of you. It comes out of you no matter what it is. It's because you've done so much research. You're so ready. Anybody can begin to ask you something about the problem that you're solving, the business that you're creating,
right?
And you'll rattle it off.
Think about this. Would you go to VC or venture capital firm or a bank for a loan or somebody to invest and just tell them your ideas or have a half-baked plan? There's no way you'd do it. So we got to think about God. Is God a good businessman?
Absolutely.
He's the best.
Yeah.
Okay. If you haven't done your homework, do you think he's going to give you the resources? No way. There's no way he's going to do it. We have to do the work.
And that's the best thing for us. It's not just that God's just going to say, I'm going to hold the money back. It's like, wait, he's doing what's best for us. And that truly is the best thing for us, is to be so prepared and so diligent that you're ready no matter what you were to ask or I would ask or anybody else. Like they're able to say, yeah, I got it.
You know what happens through diligence? We change our TDR. We change the way we think, we change what we do, and we change the result. What I have found through my own diligence and working through this, God transforms me in the process. That's what really happens. And when I have 20/20 vision and I have clarity, now that only comes on the other side of the fog. That only comes through diligence. When you truly have the vision, because even when you launch, there's a lot of things that don't work. If you don't know what to look for, if you don't have this, you just keep moving forward and you're getting killed. It's like somebody who's going up the mountain, there's fire coming from the enemy, and you're just wandering aimlessly up the mountain until you're dead.
So let me give you another word. I was just thinking about that as you're talking about this. So there's the word reservoir comes to me, okay? Reservoir. All right, so I do all of this work and I do all of this preparation and I'm reading. And here's the interesting thing is that I read 20 articles, whatever it is. And I mean, it takes a while to find the articles, we know that. But the interesting thing is that once you find those articles, it seems like other articles come into
They really
play.
do.
Now, the reason I'm saying all that is because now you're building this whole reservoir. And so that may just sit, this knowledge, let's just say it's up in here, it may sit there idle, but you begin to come in to the difficulties and the trials, and there is trial and error in the process of this whole thing of what you're doing. But now as you're going through these trial and error, you go, wait a minute, something starts to come up from the reservoir because you go, I read about this, I got this, and maybe you don't have it here, but at least you had it. Like I keep files and files on different articles, and so I'm able to go, I read that someplace, and so then I'm able to go back and find that because, well, I guess if you look at it that way, it's a reservoir. I've got that information ready so that when those difficulties come, I've got something to bring into play to help to solve the problem.
That's good. That's really good. So here's the thing, guys. If you want vision, you won't have it unless you have a detailed plan. I ask people sometimes, if you can't print it, you don't have it.
Oh, that's good.
If you don't print it, if you can't print it, you didn't do your homework. Okay. And each one builds on the next. So if we look at the 4 pillars and you work through destination, what you want out of life, all of a sudden, now once you have that, once you've gone through the diligence of that, now you have to build a business model that supports that. Once you have the business model and the brand and everything that comes as a result, now you have to create the digital assets that communicate that. Once you have the digital assets, so that's the content strategy, the website, everything that's digital, now you have to create a digital marketing, a marketing, sales, customer acquisition. That's the 4th thing. But none of it works unless you did your homework on the 1st thing and your 2nd thing, the 3rd thing, and the 4th thing. So vision is a detailed plan. It's a timeline. One of the things I ask people all the time, Scott, is when's your launch date? If they cannot spit it out, they don't have vision.
No.
And so this is what's required. This is why there's 90% failure. And all the when I see this failure, Scott, I really believe it's preventable. And you see lives destroyed, you see marriages destroyed, you see a lot of damage done. I mean, think about it. You know how many people have borrowed money from their family or taken their whole life savings and dumped it into something, but they've been reckless and not done the plan, and the chaos that causes.
Right.
And so we hear about that. We hear about frayed relationships with family, with investors, with all the. So this diligence is so important, and unless you're diligent and what's the word I'm looking for? Diligent in your preparation, you'll never have the vision. Now, in the next couple of days, you're going to get a video from our church online, and what we're going to cover is we're going to look into the scriptures and see where this is a mandate. This is not an option. This is a mandate. So when God gives you puts a calling on your life that's going to be expressed in the marketplace, there are some scriptures, and they're not options. They're orders of what's required. And so I think that once you get these inside of you and you realize that, you know what, once you start this diligence, the clarity and the resources start showing up down the road on the journey.
Exactly.
Any final words?
Yeah, at some point you got to stop being impressed with the size of your problem.
That's good.
And
that's good.
Yeah, and so
that's
you really
good.
do. You got to stop being impressed. Whatever it is that's stopping you, whatever it is that you can't overcome, at some point you got to stop being so impressed with whatever it is that's stopping you, because you got something that's inside of you that's bigger than whatever it is that you're facing right now. You
know, it's interesting. When somebody gives you an excuse, and if you ask them, well, how would you get around that? And every time they keep on giving you an excuse, you keep asking that question, it eventually comes out.
Yeah.
So, guys, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed.